The wedding day came warm and slow. The kind of day that smells like bread and olives and dust warmed by sun. Harper Hollow turned out in full neighbors. Old debts forgiven for the sake of celebration, laughter rolling through the fields. I wore a simple red dress stitched by my own hands. Elias stood beside me stiff with nerves, smiling like he couldn't believe I'd chosen him. I felt calm, not dizzy with joy, not trembling with longing. Just right. Then the sky screamed. The table shattered, first split clean down the middle by a blade of white fire. Wine jugs exploded, bread scattered, guests scattered faster. A figure descended from the open sky, robes bright as judgment, sword singing as it cut the air. Cashin. Veil. Ascended. Perfect, untouched by time. He landed in the center of the celebration like a god stepping onto a chessboard. Eyes sharp, face cold with purpose. In one smooth motion he lifted his sword and pressed it to my father's throat. The laughter died, the birds fled. Pearl Harper, Cashin said, voice ringing with power that hurt to hear. Is this true? My heart slammed so hard I thought it might break a rib. Cashin, I said, forcing my voice steady. Lower your sword. His eyes flicked to me just briefly. Answer me, he demanded. You intend to marry this man? Elias froze beside me, pale but upright. He didn't run. He didn't beg. He stood. Cashin's gaze cut him apart in a single glance. This? Cashin sneered. This is what you choose? He tightened his grip just enough that my father gasped. You would bind yourself to a useless mortal? Cashin went on, voice rising, sharp with disbelief. After everything I am? The world narrowed to that moment, steel at my father's skin. Elias trembling beside me. Villagers too afraid to breathe. And Cashin looking at me. Like I was a mistake he'd just discovered too late. Something in me went very still. I am, I said. Cashin laughed. It was a short, incredulous sound. You were never meant for this, he said. You think this man will protect you? Feed you? Keep you safe when the world turns cruel? He leaned closer, his voice lowering, intimate and cutting. I could give you anything. Gold, protection, a place beside me. I looked at him, really looked at the man who had eaten my food and slept under my roof and never once thanked me. At the god who had ascended and left me behind without a backward glance. At the blade, I said quietly. You're holding to my father's throat. Cashin faltered just a fraction. You don't understand. He said sharply. I owe you. I told you. I owe you anything you ask. I met his eyes. Then listen, I said. Lower your sword. For a heartbeat, the god hesitated. Then he did. The blade withdrew. My father collapsed against the table, shaking. Cashin straightened, anger flashing hot and bright. So this is your answer, he said. You would throw away destiny. For this. I stepped forward, placing myself fully between him and Elias. He never called me stupid, I said. Cashin blinked. He never made me feel small, I continued. He never made me beg for kindness. Cashin's jaw tightened. That's why, I said, voice breaking but unbowed. That's why I chose him. For the first time since he descended, Cashin looked lost. You're making a mistake, he said more quietly now. Maybe, I replied. But it's mine. Behind me, Elias reached for my hand, tentative, unsure if he was allowed. I squeezed back. Cashin stared at us, something dark and bitter moving behind his eyes. Then he turned away. Very well, he said coldly. Live your small life. Light gathered around him again. Wind tore through the ruined wedding feast as he rose. Cashin cast one last look over his shoulder, and for just a moment I thought I saw regret. Then the sky closed. Silence fell like ash. The guests crept back slowly. Some whispered that I was a fool. Some said I was brave. Most just looked relieved it hadn't been them. Elias knelt beside my father, helping him drink water. His hands steady. I watched him, my heart still racing, and realized something frightening and wonderful all at once. I had not chosen safety. I had chosen kindness. And somewhere far beyond the reach of gods and villages and vows, something ancient and hungry stirred, drawn not by power or destiny, but by the quiet, stubborn shape of a human heart refusing to be bought, Cashin left the village on a morning so bright it felt like mockery. Iris stood at the edge of the fields with him, her cloak catching the wind like a banner meant for victory, smiling the way people do when they know the world is about to give them exactly what they deserve. I stood farther back, my hands buried in my apron, fingers twisting the fabric until it wrinkled beyond saving. Cashin didn't look at me when he left, not once. He stepped into the light that gathered like breath around his shoulders, the old symbols burning awake beneath his skin. The air split open, clean, sharp, merciless, and he rose as if the earth had never held him at all. The villagers gasped, some dropped to their knees, some wept, someone whispered a god. I just watched the place where he'd stood empty itself of warmth. By noon Harper Hollow was drowning in congratulations, people I barely knew crowded my yard, clapping me on the shoulder like I'd won something, telling me, "Pearl, you're blessed. Who would have thought you'd raise a future? God saved a prodigy, didn't you? That's fate smiling on you." They brought gifts, wine, bread, cloth too fine for my hands, and for once no one called me foolish. But by nightfall the truth settled in my bones like cold rain. Cashin had ascended, and he had not taken me with him. 5 years passed in the way mortal years always do, uneven, stubborn, stitched together with small survivals. I stopped waiting for the sound of wings. I stopped telling myself that if I worked harder, loved quieter, became smaller, the gods might reconsider. Instead, I lived. I sold eggs, I mended nets. I laughed with neighbors who'd learned not to laugh at me. Rusty grew older, slower, heavier with comfort. And when my father, thin as a reed but still smiling, asked one evening, "Pearl, don't you want a husband, someone kind?" I surprised us both by saying yes. His name was Elias Rowan. He wasn't handsome in a heroic way, he was gentle looking, with narrow shoulders and soft eyes that never slid away when I spoke. He didn't mind that I counted on my fingers, he didn't mind repeating himself, he didn't laugh when I stumbled over sums. When I told him I wasn't clever, he shrugged. "Good," he said, "I've got enough cleverness to trip over already." He helped me carry baskets, he fixed fences without making a show of it, he spoke to my father with respect and to Rusty like an equal. When he asked me to marry him, there were no omens in the sky, just a steady voice and an open hand. I said yes. Elias Rowan became my husband the way most good things happen in a mortal life, quietly, without witnesses who mattered to the gods. We didn't redo the wedding, there was no table left worth fixing, no appetite for music, no faith that joy would survive another interruption from the sky, so we lit a single oil lamp at dusk, stood in my kitchen with Rusty snoring by the door, and spoke our vows like we were afraid the night might overhear. "I don't have much," Elias said, voice steady. "But what I have I give you. I don't ask for much," I replied. "Just don't leave." He didn't laugh at that, he nodded. "I won't." Life settled into a new shape, a better one. Elias rose before dawn to sweep the yard, feed the chickens, mend whatever had broken overnight. He kept the ledgers for me when I came back from the market, flustered and empty-handed, never sighing, never calling me slow. When I miscounted coins, he corrected the numbers without correcting me. When neighbors came with work, he helped without asking for credit. When they whispered behind our backs, "Why would she marry someone like him?" he pretended not to hear. At night we ate together at the small table, knees brushing the oil lamp, flickering like a heartbeat between us. I slept deeply for the first time in years. Sometimes I woke to find him sitting at the edge of the bed watching me breathe, not in a way that frightened me, in a way that felt careful, like he was memorizing something he was afraid to lose. I thought it was love. I wasn't wrong, just incomplete. It was Rusty who noticed first. He started growling at the dark, not at shadows, not at foxes or passing travelers, but at nothing. I could see his hackles rose at odd hours, his ears swiveling toward the corners of the room like something invisible was pacing there. "Old dog," I scolded gently. "You're imagining things." Rusty looked at me like I was the foolish one. Then there were the smells, not rot, not blood, something rich, heavy, like meat left too long in the sun, but sweet underneath, almost inviting. Elias never commented on it. When I asked if he smelled anything strange, he smiled. "Just autumn." He said, "Everything ripens before it spoils." I should have pressed, I didn't, because for the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I was enough. One night after a long day at the market, I came home exhausted. Elias was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, flour dusting his hands. "I made flatbread," he said, almost shy. "Burned one side a little." The bread was golden and warm and tasted like comfort. I laughed. You cook better than I do. His eyes softened at that. Too much too fast. Eat, he said quietly. I did. Later as I washed dishes I felt him behind me closer than usual. His hands rested at my waist, light but firm fingers. Long and surprisingly strong. You're cold, he murmured. I'm fine, I said. He leaned in, breath brushing my ear. You smell like sunlight, he said, voice low. Did you know that? I laughed, embarrassed. That's ridiculous. Is it? He asked. Something in his tone made my heart stutter. I turned. The lamp flickered for a heartbeat, just one, I thought. I saw something else looking out through his eyes, not hunger, not malice, calculation. It vanished the moment I noticed. Pearl? He said softly, smiling again. Do you regret it? What? Choosing me? I didn't hesitate, no. His smile widened too sharp, then he lowered his head and kissed my forehead, gentle as a blessing. That night I dreamed of teeth not biting, waiting. The reveal came on a market day gone wrong when Bram Cole cornered me near the grain stalls, claimed I'd shorted him last week. I knew I hadn't, but I couldn't prove it. He shoved me hard. I felt eggs, cracked coins scattered before I could gather myself. Elias was there. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he simply stepped between us. Leave, Elias said. Bram laughed. Or what? Elias tilted his head, studying him the way a butcher studies a cut of meat. For your sake, Elias said calmly, walk away. Bram sneered and raised his fist. The air shifted. I didn't see Elias move, but Bram did. He flew clear across. The market slammed into a cart, hard enough to splinter wood. The crowd screamed. I stared at Elias. He stood perfectly still, breathing, slow eyes dark, too dark. What did you do? I whispered. He looked at his hand like it surprised him. I pushed him, he said. But I saw it for just a moment. His fingers weren't fingers, they were claws, long, curved, terrible. The world tilted. That night after the villagers fled, and Bram limped away swearing vengeance, Elias didn't come to bed. I found him outside, crouched by the chicken coop, hands shaking. I didn't mean to, he said hoarsely. I forgot myself. I swallowed hard. What are you? He didn't answer at first. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. He said. Something that should not love humans. The lamp cast long shadows over his face. I waited. He closed his eyes. In the old stories, he said slowly, there are beings born before the gods learned mercy, creatures made to consume, to test the world's worth. My stomach twisted. Say it, I said. He looked at me, then really looked. I am called the devourer of oaths, he said. A hunger with a name, a god beast, the priests teach children to fear. My knees went weak. You eat people. I whispered. Yes, he said. The word fell heavy between us, then softer. I used to. I stared at him, heart pounding so loud it hurt. Why me? I asked. Why stay? His voice cracked. Because you never asked me for miracles. He said. Because you fed me when I was weak, and never once asked what I could give you back. He swallowed. And because you never offered me your heart. Silence stretched. I thought of Cassion's blade, his promises, his debts. I thought of Elias counting my coins, mending my fences, holding my hand like it mattered. You won't eat me, I said. It wasn't a question. No, he said fiercely. Never. I nodded once. Then, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Stay. He stared at me like I'd handed him the sun, outside. Rusty barked once, then lay down again. Somewhere far away, something old and furious shifted its attention. And for the first time since the gods started watching my life like a lesson, I felt certain of one thing. Whatever Elias was, he had chosen me.